Sarah sat in the hospital break room, the clock ticking past 10 p.m. She stared at her phone, the grant proposal open, but her mind was on James. She remembered his sign, his quiet pleas, her sharp words. Guilt twisted in her chest, but so did determination. She wasn't cruel, she was stressed, overwhelmed, human. Maybe she could show him that, show him she could be kind, not just to patients, but to everyone. She stood, grabbing her coat. Tomorrow, she'd face James in the boardroom. She didn't know what he'd ask, or if she could convince him, but she had to try. St. Luke's was worth it, and so was proving she was more than her mistakes. The rain had stopped outside, the city quieter now. Sarah stepped into the night, her heart heavy but set. James Thornton had shaken her world, and she wasn't backing down. Sarah Mitchell barely slept, her mind stuck on the rainy confrontation with James Thornton. His words, "Show me who you really are," echoed like a challenge. She tossed in her small Chicago apartment, the city's hum a dull roar outside. At 30, Sarah was a nurse at St. Luke's Hospital, her green eyes shadowed from stress, her blonde ponytail a constant mess. She'd snapped at a homeless man, only to learn he was a billionaire testing her kindness. Now, he held the key to saving her hospital, and she had one chance to prove herself. Her heart raced as she dressed for work, pulling on scrubs and a coat, her mom's voice in her head, "You're tougher than this, Sarah." St. Luke's was buzzing when she arrived. Nurses whispered about a mystery donor meeting the board, someone who could save the hospital from closing. Sarah's stomach churned. She knew it was James, the man she'd dismissed as a beggar. Her boss, nurse manager Linda, caught her in the hallway. "Sarah, you're presenting the grant proposal today," Linda said, her voice firm. "The board's counting on you. Don't mess this up." Sarah nodded, her throat tight. Linda didn't know about James, didn't know Sarah's harsh words, "Try working," might cost them everything. The grant was Sarah's extra job, a pile of papers and numbers she'd worked on late at night. St. Luke's needed money for nurses, machines, and beds, or it would shut down. Sarah wasn't a writer, but she'd poured her heart into it, thinking of her patients, the kids, the elderly, the scared families. She'd chosen nursing because of her mom, who'd cared for their poor neighborhood, teaching Sarah to help others. But months of stress had made her cold, ignoring strangers like James. Now, she faced him again, not as a homeless man, but as a billionaire with power over her future. Sarah walked to the boardroom, her sneakers quiet on the hospital's worn tiles. Her hands shook, clutching a folder with the proposal. She'd practiced her speech, but James's blue eyes haunted her. Last night, he'd revealed himself as James Thornton, head of Thornton Industries, a company that gave millions to charities. He'd been pretending to be homeless, testing people's kindness, and Sarah had failed. She'd ignored his pleas for weeks, too busy with work to care. His final test, her sharp reply in the rain, had sealed her failure, but he'd offered one more chance. Today was it. The boardroom door felt heavy as she pushed it open. The hospital's board sat around a long table, their faces serious. At the head was James, clean-shaven, his dark hair neat, his suit sharp. His blue eyes locked on her, calm but intense, like he could see through her. The board chair, Dr. Evans, stood. "Ms. Mitchell, this is Mr. James Thornton, CEO of Thornton Industries. He's considering a donation to St. Luke's. Your presentation will help him decide." Sarah's heart pounded. She set her folder on the table, her hands sweaty. James's gaze didn't waver, and she felt the weight of her mistakes, every time she'd rushed past him, every "sorry" she didn't mean. She took a deep breath, remembering her mom's lessons, help people, no matter what. She could do this, not just for the hospital, but to show James she wasn't heartless. "Thank you for being here," Sarah started, her voice steady despite her nerves. She clicked a projector, showing charts of the hospital's needs. St. Luke's serves thousands of people, kids, families, seniors. We're short on nurses, our machines are old, and we're running out of beds. Without funding, we'll close, and patients will suffer. Her voice grew stronger, thinking of the little girl she'd comforted yesterday, the old man who'd thanked her for listening. This grant will hire staff, fix equipment, and keep our doors open. We're not just a hospital, we're a lifeline. The board nodded, but James stayed quiet, his face blank. Sarah's chest tightened. Was he judging her work, or her? She kept going, explaining budgets and plans, her words clear and honest. She finished with a plea, please, help us keep fighting for our patients. The room was silent, all eyes on James. He leaned forward, his voice low. Ms. Mitchell, why should I trust you with my money? The question hit like a punch. The board froze, and Sarah's pulse raced. She saw his corner, his soggy sign, her sharp words in the rain. This wasn't just about the hospital, it was about her. She met his eyes, refusing to look away. I've seen what happens when we can't help, she said. I've held patients' hands, stayed late to make sure they're okay. I was wrong to ignore you, and I'm sorry. I let stress make me cold, but I'm not that person. I'll fight for this hospital and for anyone who needs me. Her voice cracked, but she stood tall, her green eyes steady. James's lips twitched, a hint of a smile. The board held their breath, waiting. He nodded slowly. You've got my money, he said. St. Luke's will stay open. The room erupted in cheers, board members clapping, some wiping tears. Dr. Evans shook James's hand, thanking him. Sarah exhaled, relief flooding her, but James's eyes stayed on her, his smile saying more than his words. She'd passed his test, but it felt like something else was starting, something she didn't understand yet. As the board filed out, James approached her. Good job, Sarah, he said, his voice soft. But this isn't over. I'll be working with you on the grant. I want to see more of who you are. Her heart skipped. Was he still testing her? Or was this something personal? I'll be ready, she said, her voice firm despite the flutter in her chest. He nodded and left, his suit sharp against the hospital's dull walls. Sarah stood alone, the folder still in her hands. She'd saved St. Luke's, at least for now, but James's words lingered. She felt guilty for how she'd treated him, but also hopeful. He'd seen something in her, enough to give her a chance. James's gaze didn't waver, and she felt the weight of her mistakes, every time she'd rushed past him, every sorry she didn't mean. She took a deep breath, remembering her mom's lessons, help people, no matter what. She could do this, not just for the hospital, but to show James she wasn't heartless. Thank you for being here, Sarah started, her voice steady despite her nerves. She clicked a projector, showing charts of the hospital's needs. St. Luke's serves thousands of people, kids, families, seniors. We're short on nurses, our machines are old, and we're running out of beds. Without funding, we'll close, and patients will suffer. Her voice grew stronger, thinking of the little girl she'd comforted yesterday, the old man who'd thanked her for listening. This grant will hire staff, fix equipment, and keep our doors open. We're not just a hospital, we're a lifeline. The board nodded, but James stayed quiet, his face blank. Sarah's chest tightened. Was he judging her work, or her? She kept going, explaining budgets and plans, her words clear and honest. She finished with a plea, please, help us keep fighting for our patients. The room was silent, all eyes on James. He leaned forward, his voice low. Ms. Mitchell, why should I trust you with my money? The question hit like a punch. The board froze, and Sarah's pulse raced. She saw his corner, his soggy sign, her sharp words in the rain. This wasn't just about the hospital, it was about her. She met his eyes, refusing to look away. I've seen what happens when we can't help, she said. I've held patients' hands, stayed late to make sure they're okay. I was wrong to ignore you, and I'm sorry. I let stress make me cold, but I'm not that person. I'll fight for this hospital and for anyone who needs me. Her voice cracked, but she stood tall, her green eyes steady. James's lips twitched, a hint of a smile. The board held their breath, waiting. He nodded slowly. You've got my money, he said. St. Luke's will stay open. The room erupted in cheers, board members clapping, some wiping tears. Dr. Evans shook James's hand, thanking him. Sarah exhaled, relief flooding her, but James's eyes stayed on her, his smile saying more than his words. She'd passed his test, but it felt like something else was starting, something she didn't understand yet. As the board filed out, James approached her. Good job, Sarah, he said, his voice soft. But this isn't over. I'll be working with you on the grant. I want to see more of who you are. Her heart skipped. Was he still testing her? Or was this something personal? I'll be ready, she said, her voice firm despite the flutter in her chest. He nodded and left, his suit sharp against the hospital's dull walls. Sarah stood alone, the folder still in her hands. She'd saved St. Luke's, at least for now, but James's words lingered. She felt guilty for how she'd treated him, but also hopeful. He'd seen something in her, enough to give her a chance. She thought of her. Sarah Mitchell sat in the St. Luke's hospital break room, her green eyes scanning a laptop screen filled with grant details. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on her blonde ponytail, now neater than usual. At 30, Sarah was a nurse who'd just saved her hospital from closing, thanks to James Thornton's donation. But the billionaire's blue eyes and quiet challenge, I want to see more of who you are, kept her on edge. She'd failed his kindness test as a disguised homeless man, snapping at him in the rain, but he'd given her a second chance. Now, they were working together, and Sarah felt like she was still being tested. It had been 3 weeks since the boardroom meeting. James's money was already changing St. Luke's. New nurses walked the halls, their faces fresh and eager. Broken machines were replaced, and patient rooms got new beds. The air felt lighter, like hope had moved in. Sarah saw it in her patients. A kid smiling after surgery, an old woman thanking her for a clean blanket. The hospital wasn't perfect, but it was alive, and Sarah felt proud. Still, James's presence made her nervous. He wasn't just a donor, he was a mystery, and she wasn't sure what he wanted from her. James Thornton, 35, was no longer the grimy figure with a soggy sign. Clean-shaven, his dark hair neat, he wore sharp suits that matched his billionaire status as head of Thornton Industries. He'd left his wealthy life years ago, tired of people chasing his money, and lived as a homeless man to find real kindness. St. Luke's, a hospital he'd secretly funded, was his latest project. Sarah had caught his eye, her care for patients was real, but her cold brush-offs outside work made him curious. He'd tested her, and she'd failed, but her boardroom apology showed heart. Now, he wanted to know more, not just about her kindness, but about her. Sarah and James met often to work on the grant. They sat in a small hospital office, papers spread across a table, discussing budgets and plans. At first, it was awkward. Sarah felt guilty for ignoring him, her words, "Try working," still stinging. She kept her answers short, her eyes on the papers, afraid to meet his gaze. James was careful, too, his questions polite but probing, like he was still judging her. He'd ask about the hospital, how many nurses they needed, what machines were best, but sometimes, he'd slip in something personal. "Why nursing, Sarah?" or "What keeps you going?" She'd mumble replies, her cheeks warm, unsure if he was testing her again. Slowly, things changed. Sarah started to relax, noticing James wasn't cold or bossy. He listened when she talked, his blue eyes steady, a small smile breaking through when she explained a patient's story. She saw he cared about St. Luke's, not just as a donor, but as someone who wanted it to help people. One day, he brought coffee, handing her a cup with a grin. "You look like you need this," he said. She laughed, surprised by how easy it felt. The guilt was still there, but it was fading, replaced by a cautious trust. James opened up, too. One afternoon, as they reviewed staffing plans, he leaned back, his tie loosened. "I got tired of the money," he said, his voice low. "Everyone wanted something, deals, favors, my name. I left to find real people, ones who'd help a stranger for no reason." Sarah listened, her pen still. She hadn't thought about his side, how lonely it must be, never knowing who to trust. "Why St. Luke's?" she asked, her voice soft. "It's personal," he said, his eyes distant. "My mom died in a hospital like this. I wanted to make sure others got better care." Sarah's chest tightened. She saw him now, not as a billionaire, but as a man with his own pain. She wanted to say something, but the words stuck, so she just nodded, letting the silence hold them. Sarah started sharing, too. One evening, as they packed up, she told him about her mom. "She was a nurse, like me," she said, her green eyes on the floor. "She worked hard, helped everyone, even when we had nothing. I wanted to be like her, but lately, I've been different. Too stressed to care." James looked at her, his face gentle. "You're still like her," he said. "You just got lost for a bit." His words hit deep, easing a knot in her heart. Their meetings became more than work. They'd talk about small things, favorite foods, bad movies, Chicago's cold winters. Sarah caught herself smiling more, noticing James's laugh, the way his eyes crinkled. He wasn't the scary billionaire she'd feared, but someone real, someone who saw her. She started to see him, too, not the homeless man, not the donor, but James, who'd chosen to trust her despite her mistakes. One day, in the hospital's quiet courtyard, they took a break, sitting on a bench with coffee. The air was crisp, the sky clear. James looked at her, his voice serious. "You're not who I thought, Sarah. You care, even when it's hard. That's why I'm here." Sarah's cheeks warmed. "I was awful to you," she said, her voice low. "I'm still sorry." He shook his head. "You were stressed, not cruel. You showed me you can change. That's enough." She met his eyes, her heart racing. For the first time, she didn't feel judged. She felt seen, like the Sarah her mom raised, the one who cared about everyone. "You changed me, too," she said. "I'm trying to be better, not just at work." James smiled, a real one, not the careful one he used with the board. "Good," he said. "Because I'm sticking around." Sarah laughed, the sound light, like a weight had lifted. They went back to work, but something was different. The grant was almost done, St. Luke's was stronger, and their talks felt like a bridge, not a test. Sarah still worried, James was a billionaire, his world so different from hers. Could they really connect? But she pushed the doubt away, focusing on the moment. As they left the courtyard, the hospital's hum surrounded them, a reminder of why they were here. Sarah felt a spark of hope, not just for St. Luke's, but for herself. James wasn't her boss or her judge anymore, he was someone she wanted to know, someone who made her want to be better. The future was uncertain, but for now, they were building something together, one honest step at a time. Sarah Mitchell leaned against a table in the St. Luke's Hospital cafeteria, her green eyes scanning a stack of grant papers. The room was empty, the fluorescent lights dim, casting long shadows across the tiled floor. At 30, Sarah was a nurse who'd fought to save her hospital, and with James Thornton's donation, she'd won. New nurses bustled in the halls, machines hummed, and patients smiled again. But James, the billionaire who'd tested her kindness, was still on her mind. His words from weeks ago, "I want to see more of who you are," felt like a promise, not just a challenge. Her blonde ponytail swung as she straightened, her heart beating faster than usual. It was late, past 9 p.m., and the hospital was quiet. Sarah and James had spent the day finalizing the grant, their last big task together. St. Luke's was safe, its future bright, but their work had become more than paperwork. Over the past month, they'd grown closer, sharing stories, laughs, and quiet moments that made Sarah feel seen. She'd failed his test as a disguised homeless man, snapping, "Try working," in the rain, but he'd given her a chance to prove herself. Now, she wondered what came next, not just for the hospital, but for them. James Thornton, 35, sat across from her, his suit jacket off, his dark hair slightly messy. His blue eyes, once hidden under a fake beard, were warm now, his strong jaw softened by a smile. As the head of Thornton Industries, he'd built a billion-dollar empire, but he'd left it behind, tired of fake friends chasing his wealth. He'd lived as a homeless man, testing people's kindness, and St. Luke's was his latest focus. Sarah had intrigued him, her care for patients was real, but her cold brush-offs pushed him to test her. Her boardroom apology and hard work since then showed heart, and James wanted more than a partnership. He wanted her trust, maybe her heart. Their meetings had changed. At first, Sarah was nervous, guilty for ignoring him, her answers short. James was careful, his questions probing, like he was still judging her. But as weeks passed, they relaxed. They'd joke about hospital food, share stories about Chicago winters, and talk about things that mattered. James told her about his mom, who died in a hospital, driving him to help places like St. Luke's. Sarah opened up about her mom, a nurse who taught her to care, and how stress had made her lose that part of herself. Each talk built a bridge, turning their work into something personal. Tonight, the cafeteria felt different. The grant was done, St. Luke's was thriving, and their job was over. Sarah felt a mix of relief and worry. Would James leave now? His world, money, power, was so different from hers. She was a nurse, scraping by, her life tied to this hospital. Could they really connect? She pushed the thought away, focusing on the papers, but her hands fidgeted, betraying her nerves. James noticed. He closed his laptop, leaning back. "We did it, Sarah," he said, his voice soft. "St. Luke's is safe. You should be proud." She smiled, but it was shaky. "We did it together," she said, meeting his eyes. "Your money made it happen." He shook his head. "Money's easy. You made it real, your work, your heart. You passed my test, but you changed me, too." Her chest tightened. "Changed you?" she asked, her voice quiet. James leaned forward, his blue eyes steady. "I was looking for kindness, but I found you," he said. "You care, even when it's hard. You showed me it's not just about giving, it's about trying again, every day." Sarah's cheeks warmed, her guilt fading. She'd been so ashamed of snapping at him, of ignoring his pleas, but he didn't hold it against her. He saw her, the Sarah who fought for patience, who wanted to be like her mom. "You changed me, too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was so focused on work, I forgot how to care about people outside it. You made me see them again." He smiled, a real one, not the careful one he used with others. "Like me?" he asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. She laughed, the sound easing the tension. "Yeah, like you," she said, her green eyes meeting his. "I see you now, James. Not the billionaire, not the homeless guy, just you." The air shifted, heavy with something new. James reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. Sarah's heart raced, but she didn't pull away. His touch was warm, steady, like he was asking permission. She turned her hand, letting their fingers lace together, her breath catching. It was small, but it felt huge, like a door opening. "I don't want this to end," James said, his voice low. "The grant's done, but I'm not going anywhere. I want to know you, Sarah, not just work with you. Her throat tightened. She wanted that, too, but doubt crept in. Your life's so different, she said. The money, the company, I'm just a nurse. Can this work? He squeezed her hand. I'm not my money, he said. I'm the guy who stood in the rain, hoping you'd stop. You did, in your own way. That's enough for me. Sarah's eyes stung, but she smiled. He wasn't asking her to change, wasn't judging her past. She thought of her mom, who'd loved fiercely, no matter the odds. Maybe Sarah could do that, too. She leaned closer, her heart pounding, and kissed him. It was soft, hesitant, but real, a promise of something new, not perfect, but honest. They pulled back, their hands still linked, the cafeteria quiet around them. What now? Sarah asked, her voice light, a grin breaking through. We figure it out, James said, his smile matching hers. Together. They sat there, papers forgotten, the hospital's hum a distant comfort. St. Luke's was stronger, and so were they. Sarah knew it wouldn't be easy, his wealth, her pride, their different worlds, but it felt right. They'd met in the rain, messed up, and found a way to start over. The city sparkled outside, its lights a reminder of the world they'd both ignored. Now, they'd face it together, one step at a time. Sarah stood, gathering her things, James beside her. They left the cafeteria, their shoulders brushing, the future open. She wasn't just a nurse anymore, she was someone who'd learned to see, to care, because of him. And he wasn't just a billionaire, he was the man who trusted her when she didn't trust herself. They'd built something real, and that was worth every risk.